our CEO and co-founder, Matt DeBergalis.
Good morning. Welcome to GraphQL Summit. I'm so pleased you're all here and that you've chosen to spend a few days with us. We're also online. Welcome to those of you tuning in from all over the world. It's been a really exciting year for us, for all of us, for GraphQL, an important year, I think, and we have a whole lot to talk about. So again, thank you. Thank you for coming. And maybe I can start on a personal note. I've got a new letter in my title. And after a long time as CTO here at the company, I took the CEO role this summer. A lot of you reached out to me with really kind words of encouragement, and it meant the world to me. So thank you. I really appreciate knowing that you're behind me and all of us here at Apollo. We certainly have a lot to do, and it means the world to us. So thank you. Welcome to San Francisco. This is our town. It's a unique city. I'm glad we're back here. A really wonderful place. It's become my family's home, and I hope you can make some time while you're here to explore some of what makes this such a special place, and see some of what we love so much about it. This particular week has always been one of my favorites. We have a tradition going back to the 80s called Fleet Week that features an air show with the Blue Angels, the US Navy flight demonstration team. I don't think we're going to have them this year because of the shutdown. But I wanted to put the picture up because they're awesome. They really do fly. They go right over the bridge in the bay. And I suppose this hotel, now that I think about it, if you haven't had a chance to see them, it's really incredible, and I'm looking forward to the next one. I know we have some folks from Canada here. Can you shout out if you guys are flying in your flight demonstrators, the Snowbirds. So we are going to have an air show. It's going to be great. Another thing I love about this time of year here in San Francisco is the weather. And can I do like a 30-second meteorology thing? It's a technical conference, right? So you know San Francisco maybe is cold and foggy, which it absolutely is in the summer. And for those who don't know, this is California. And the middle of California, this is a sort of exaggerated relief map. The middle of it is called the Central Valley. It's where most of the country's fruits and vegetables are grown. And in the summer, it gets ripping hot. Hot air rises, low pressure, and we are at pretty much the only gap in the mountains that surround the valley. So in the summer, this is the world's biggest air conditioner, and it's pulling in all this cold air from out over the Pacific Ocean. But in October, the valley cools off, and the whole thing shuts off. And so you get this. You get 75, 80-degree days. It's beautiful. It's a wonderful time of year here. All right, on to more important matters. We're actually going to get back to planes and weather in a minute, turns out. But we've got some GraphQL stuff to talk about. I want to thank our sponsors. Goose is here. Current is here. Zolvio. They all help us put this event on. Please take a moment to speak with them and thank them. Also, Chandrika mentioned we're doing a hackathon tomorrow, and we've been working with Railway as part of that. It's been wonderful getting to know them, and I wanted to thank them as well for all their support here. So thank you. It's our 8th summit. I say this every year. It's an event we put on more than anything for community and for learning from each other. This goes all the way back to the very beginnings of GraphQL and our time together. It's what makes the event so special and so important for us. And what we've tried to do this year is put together a program that highlights what we think is the most exciting and relevant and important happenings from all across the community that we can all learn from. Everyone here has contributed so much. So we've got 30 some odd sessions and workshops over the next couple days that I hope you get a chance to see as many as possible. We've also, though, tried to add a lot of extra hallway time because I know how important that is too. And so I hope you like the format. There's a few things that caught my eye. One of them this morning is a talk from Wiz about their partner integration network. So they're doing some really interesting things around how they're using GraphQL and MCP to reimagine what a really high-quality partner experience is for integrating with the platform and what you can do with that. I'm really excited to hear more about what they've done. That's this morning. After lunch, we've got Intuit here. They are doing some really interesting stuff with agentic schema governance. And that's something I've talked to a lot of you about over the last year. I think there are big opportunities to use AI to have a more thoughtful, a more sophisticated take on schema quality and on change management. So we thought a lot of what is happening here is really interesting and important, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about what they've done and what that means for all of us building GraphQL at scale. And then one more I'll highlight tomorrow. We've been working with the team at Booking.com for many years. They've adopted GraphQL all across their API footprint. I had a chance to meet with some of them in Amsterdam a few weeks ago. And what they're doing to prepare for AI and for agentic user experiences, I think is relevant to all of us. So they're going to talk more about that tomorrow here at Summit. There's just so many wonderful companies in so many different industries that are doing amazing things on Apollo, products that millions and millions of people use every day. And it's just such an incredible community. We're proud of that. We're proud of the work that we've done on that, and we're proud of all of the work that you've all done to build such wonderful experiences, but also to move GraphQL forward and the technology that makes this possible forward. And that's what makes Summit so special and so important. You know, we could record all of this. I mean, we're going to put all this on the web, but it doesn't substitute for the human factor. It doesn't substitute for what we're really all here to do in person together, to learn from each other, to inspire each other, and to move the community forward. So thank you again one more time for everything you've all done. I am so grateful for it. It says Matt right on the lid. This one's for me. We have a birthday celebration. GraphQL and Apollo are 10 years old this fall. And I think about all the work we've all done over those last 10 years to make this the success that it's become. And let me catch you up just on the last year, the progress we've made together as a community. The very first piece of code we wrote for Apollo was Apollo Client. And I know for many, the client is really the front door to GraphQL. It's what brought you and your teams to this whole technology idea. And it's a privilege to be able to work with all of you and with the JavaScript and React and Swift and Kotlin communities to make GraphQL what it is. And the client is our vehicle in so many ways for being able to do that. So earlier this summer, we released the next generation of clients for the web and for iOS. On the web, Apollo Client 4 is all about a tighter integration with modern TypeScript and Next.js and all the web standards. There's a ton of really great stuff in here. We've supported more use of native TypeScript types in different settings. We've switched to RxJS for observability. You know, a lot of this is actually about making the development experience in the editor more and more agentic first. So it turns out a lot of the support for strong typing and a lot of the closer binding to the modern use of TypeScript has a big advantage as we start to adapt those kinds of tools. And this is a big part of what we wanted to do with the client. AI changes a lot, but I suppose one thing it doesn't change is the insatiable desire for smaller and smaller bundles. And I guess that's the biggest prize here. Despite all of the additions, Apollo Client 4 actually has a dramatically smaller footprint than its predecessors. And of course, that has big advantages for performance and responsiveness in the application. So we're excited about what we've been able to do on the web. On iOS, the big news is that Swift 6 changes the concurrency model in a very significant way. And with Apollo Client 2.0 for iOS, we've adapted that modern concurrency model, new patterns for async and await that if you're a mobile developer, you'll know are super important for building a modern app. So we've got a lot inside iOS 2.0 there as well, and we're excited for all the clients. Here's another milestone. We have recently crossed now more than 1 trillion operations each month on GraphOS. And the growth of that has really been nice to see. Here's a chart that shows how we've gotten there. This is the last 2 years of traffic flowing through the router on GraphOS. And what you see is in the last 12 months, an acceleration of that growth. And that's really exciting for us. It's more than triple where we were just a year ago. And this reflects both more and more applications being built on Apollo, but also the success of those applications. And I think the future for GraphQL is bright. And I think the things that we're all doing with it really are testament to just how important and foundational this is to the modern stack. We've been busy over the last year improving GraphOS. A year ago, we announced Apollo connectors. This is our take on a fully declarative approach to GraphQL. So rather than having to write GraphQL servers and resolvers, connectors allows you to bring the REST APIs that you have as they are directly to the graph. We'll have more to say about that later today. But over the last year, we've added more and more support for more and more different types of APIs and the different requirements that they bring. We released Router 2.0 last year with a native query planner, and there's been a whole series of 2.x releases in the time since then. All kinds of enhancements to the GraphOS platform. And one of the things I'm most excited about is this summer we announced new pricing that's designed for startups and smaller organizations. For us, GraphQL has been such a success at large scale, at large companies, but that's not enough. Our mission is to bring it to everybody. And it's just as important for me that GraphQL and all of its benefits be something that a 2-person startup can take advantage of, where it's just as transformative as it is for a multinational company. And so I'm thrilled to bring up to the stage one of the many founders who's been building on Apollo. David Sarabia's new startup is helping doctors do more with their time, and it's all built on GraphQL. Welcome, David.
Thank you, Matt. Hey, everyone. Happy to be back here at Summit with you all. As Matt was saying, I've built 2 companies with Apollo GraphQL at this point because it's really the foundation to move fast without compromising on security and reliability. My latest company, ClinicaMind, is leveraging Apollo to create the future of conversational AI for healthcare. But before I show you what we're building, I'll walk you through my journey. I started coding at 8 years old. Commodore 64, if anyone knows. I just revealed my age. Sold 2 companies by 27, and one is a unicorn now. I later fell to addiction, though, and to the point of even being homeless. I was one of those guys you see on the street here in in San Francisco. Years later, I rebuilt myself quickly, but remained heavily addicted to cocaine. And years later, I actually decided to go to rehab after my best friend and mentor, tech investor, accidentally overdosed. There, I was inspired to build my first health tech company called In Recovery, from a vision for data-driven care. Now, 8 years later into that journey of In Recovery taught me so much. And that led me to building ClinicaMind, where we're reimagining the future of healthcare, medical collaboration, And during a hackathon at YC here in San Francisco, a Y Combinator hackathon, we built a quick MVP just to see what we can do using Apollo. I knew I wanted to start with the GraphQL data layer, of course, because it would just be perfect for this conversational AI idea. And I was pleasantly surprised to realize that Apollo had just released their MCP servers just a few days prior. We used Apollo MCP to connect to legacy medical and clinical research systems. If anyone knows healthcare, we were connected to Epic, which sounds crazy, right? Now, that same graph, an MCP server, from the hackathon code is part of our production system, and now we're reaching about 150 in ARR and growing. Actually, enough of my talk. Let's look at an actual demo. Here you're going to see my co-founder, Julio Vega. He's a neurologist at UCSF, leaving a 16-hour shift from the hospital. He's wrapping up his remaining work in his car, and he's actually going to be talking live to Epic and to PubMed to query clinical research that's relevant for his cases. To the video, please.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks for asking. How was your day? Ready to jump into case recaps, or would you prefer to chat about something else?
Yeah, no, let's go into case recaps. It was a long day, so I definitely want to think about a few of those cases.
All right, let's do it. We had 14 cases today. The most pressing was Robert D., who presented with a first focal seizure that progressed to a generalized tonic-clonic seizure, and we found a brain tumor. Second, we saw Emma, who is 32, and presented with a postpartum clot. She's currently stable on heparin. Everyone else appears to be stable. Where would you like to start?
Let's go into Robert's case. I think that case is pretty important, and we were thinking of discussing his case with the neurosurgeons tomorrow.
Okay, Robert D., his case is significant. He presented with a first focal seizure that evolved into a generalized tonic-clonic seizure. Our workup revealed a brain tumor. Would you like to dive into the specifics of his history, medications, imaging, or labs?
Yeah, let's jump into what medications we're using for him and just look at some options potentially.
Robert is currently on levetiracetam, 750 milligrams twice a day. Given the new diagnosis of a brain tumor and his seizure presentation, we should discuss if this is the optimal regimen or if adjustments are needed before consulting with neurosurgery. We can also consider other anti-epileptic drugs based on the tumor type and location.
Yeah, no, specifically based on the tumor type, let's look at what the best option medication is going to be for him.
Okay, so Robert's pathology revealed an oligodendroglioma, which is an IDH mutant 1P1Q co-deleted tumor. Studies show that seizures occur in 70 to 90% of patients with oligodendrogliomas and are often the first.
So what you just witnessed is actually groundbreaking. If you know anything about healthcare software, the conversational AI piece is just amazing data, a new UI layer that can be game-changing for doctors. Julio there was doing his post-work shift, basically post-shift work during his commute. Instead of going home and working another 4 or 5 hours doing a bunch of other work, documentation, follow-up, and so on. Apollo GraphQL as our data layer means that we feed the AI exactly what it needs and nothing more, the same as we do with our UIs. And that results in low latency, perfectly structured data, and security, secure access, really. The same foundation that powers our supercrafts now powers our conversational AI. We went from a 4-hour hackathon to production in weeks. That's only possible because Apollo gave us the foundation to move fast. This week, I'm super excited to announce that we're open sourcing our entire platform. And that's powered by Apollo, MongoDB, and a partnership that we have with Meta Superintelligence team, where we're using Llama Stack to run inference on device for ultimate privacy and security. Everything will be on GitHub, and because if we can help make healthcare more human again, imagine what you can do to build, when you build things that can help people that you care about. So back to Matt. Thanks so much, everybody.
Thank you, David. OK, so that's where we've been. The rest of this morning is about where we're going. I'm sure it's a big shock. Is there anyone here that hasn't heard of agents? Is there anyone here that thinks this is no big deal? Right. There have been just a few truly transformative groundbreaking technologies in our industry, technologies that changed the whole world forever. The transistor and the digital computing that it made possible. The internet and the global communication network that it created. And now, just a few years ago, the breakthrough that ignited the rise of LLMs and modern AI. Computing and the internet and now AI. That's how big this is. And we're at the beginning of it, but we're at the beginning of a fundamental change, the most significant of our careers, to be sure, possibly our lifetimes. And it's already had, in just a few short years, a profound impact on our profession, on our businesses, and on society. And I think we're just at the beginning. We're just at the start of what this shift means for all of us. Now, consumers using chatbots is one thing, but what's really seismic is the impact that AI is having on every enterprise and on the engineering organizations in every enterprise. And to me, there's not one, but three major impacts, three major forces that AI is bringing on all of us. The first one we all know, it's agentic coding. We've all been doing this. And it's clear that in just a few years, the vast majority of our software will be written by software. And what this means is the entire software development lifecycle, the tools and the infrastructure, and also the processes and the rituals that we have built up over decades, really, all of that is going to be swept away. Because those tools and those processes are really about how you quickly and reliably and securely deliver great software. And in a world where the software is being built more and more autonomously, more and more at the hands of intelligent technology, this has profound implications for trust and for security and for data. So navigating just that for an enterprise engineering executive would be a career achievement. To bring an organization from a traditional world of human-led software development and human-oriented collaboration to a model that's oriented around agentic development and autonomous software delivery. And yet that's the smallest, the simplest of the three big forces here. Because here's the second one. As writing software gets cheaper, we're all going to have a lot more of it. It's not like we're going to run out of software we want to write. And one thing we do know about agentic development that I don't think is going to change quickly is that it's at its best in more contained, more scoped environments. So we're all about to be the proud owners of a ton of new microservices and front ends. Congratulations. And each of those services, each of those front ends has an interface, an API of some kind. And we're going to have to integrate all of it with the stuff that we already have. That's a huge undertaking. Remember that integration is an n-squared problem. So if you say triple the footprint of microservices, which I think is a pretty good guess at what's about to happen, if you triple the footprint of microservices, you're talking about an order of magnitude increase in the connections between all the systems and services and APIs that you have. And I think few, if any, organizations are really set up to absorb an order of magnitude growth in that kind of layer of the stack. So that's another massive disruption to any organization of any size. And navigating that, I think, for a technology executive would be the crowning achievement of a great career in the enterprise. A lifetime achievement award is on the offering for anyone who does that. But it's not the biggest change, because we are now starting to see that what's coming is a new kind of customer interaction, a new kind of experience that embeds intelligence into every touch point. And we're starting to see a glimmer of what this is going to be like, right? We're talking about really good voice and virtual assistants. You just saw an example of that. That's the result of the rise of agentic user experience. It's going to be prompt boxes instead of search boxes in all of your software. We're starting to see that. It's going to be free-form UIs that have a more flexible, dynamic construction that merge traditional UI elements with agentic flows. It's going to be shopping inside of a chatbot. We'll talk about that one in a minute. And the thing of it is, all of these experiences are going to come very, very quickly. And in fact, all three of these forces that are pressing on the enterprise are going to come faster than anything we've ever seen before. I mean, remember how long it took companies to build websites? Like the web, right? The fastest growing thing we ever had actually really took its time to play out. But this one, not so much. And so what does that mean for us and the API world? APIs are being swept up with all these changes too. I mean, AI forces us to rethink every fundamental at every layer of the stack, and I don't see APIs as any exception to that. APIs today are the very definition of a fixed and stable interface. And that just doesn't really fit a world with free-form, non-deterministic user experiences that sit on top of an order of magnitude more systems and services, all of which are changing an order of magnitude more quickly than ever before. So we're going to need a new approach. We're going to need a new approach to everything that we hold true about APIs, about how we design them, about how we use them, about how we deploy and manage them. All of it, I think, is under enormous pressure now and requires a new approach. And GraphQL, I think, gives us an ideal foundation for that change. Take banking as an example, and I've heard from many in the banking industry. Banks have an interesting challenge with their applications. They've got to serve retirees who write checks, paper checks, to their grandkids and balance their account every month. They've also got to serve millennials that are trying to accumulate a bunch of credit card rewards points. That's this audience, right? They've also got to serve Gen Z and even Gen Alpha customers. All these people have very different ideas of what a bank even is, let alone what they want the app to do. And so a banking experience tomorrow, I think, is going to be very different from the fixed application that you use today. AI means we can give each of those users an experience that's tailored to their preferences and their needs. So you can do more, right? You can do more with your deposits, your investments, your credit cards, your crypto, your payments. Think about what that means for the hundreds of APIs that sit underneath that experience. GraphQL bridges those two worlds together. It makes the APIs AI ready, and it makes possible the kind of experience that we all want to build. And so here's what this looks like in practice. A GraphQL-based platform like Apollo that describes your APIs, gives you a central place to enforce policy and rules, and then lets anyone in an organization use them in new ways to build something new. A platform, in short, that makes your APIs AI ready. I think this is what most every enterprise, most every organization will need. The changes are coming too fast, and the impact and the stakes are so high that to navigate that, to be able to build quickly, but to do it on a solid and principled foundation is just essential to having a shot at keeping up with the pace of AI and the impact that AI will have on us. So whether you're adopting agentic development in your organization, or if your company is integrating new software, or if you're all rethinking your roadmap around how to build an agentic or an intelligent experience for your customers, our goal is to give you and your teams a principled foundation for that work that lets you quickly and safely build the applications of tomorrow and improve the applications you already have today, all with GraphQL at the heart. So you're at the center of what's about to happen. And what you've already built, I think, is about to become even more important. If you're nervous about what AI means for your company, know that you've picked the right technology, and you've given your users firm ground to stand on. Not just for the problems you have today, but for the challenges that you're going to face and your companies are going to face tomorrow. And if you're feeling sidelined by AI, whether there's still a place for the kind of work that we do in the infrastructure layer in an agentic world, I think you actually hold in your hands one of the most important ingredients for your company's success. And our goal at Apollo, our focus is to be there with you through that journey. So let's talk about how. And we're going to start with the foundations, the platform layer that makes agentic development really sing. And to set the stage for that, I want to have you hear from a company that's gone all in on GraphQL. We've been working with the team at Indeed for many years, and I want to welcome Jeffrey Russom up on stage to tell us more about what they're doing at Indeed.
Welcome. Thanks. All right, thanks, Matt. Thanks for having us. So, at Indeed, we help 27 people find jobs every minute. Our supergraph powers these interactions with Indeed's full supergraph, consisting of more than 350 federated subgraphs, handling over 60 billion operations per month. Over 200 engineers across Indeed ship supergraph changes on an average of 70 times a week. We've been building on Apollo for years. And when our CEO challenged us to launch an AI hiring assistant in just 9 months, that foundation became our competitive advantage. Dozens of engineers, product managers, and scientists joined forces to make our new product, Talent Scout, a reality. Early on, we knew our old real-time system just wouldn't cut it. It wasn't secure enough, it wasn't type-safe, and it created a slow, clunky chat experience. Not the kind of thing that you want when you're building a product that helps employers make hiring decisions fast. That's where our partnership with Apollo really paid off. Apollo Router and federated subscriptions became the backbone of Talent Scout. Instead of polling or patching together workarounds, now we stream structured real-time updates directly into the UI, progress messages, candidate insights, and multi-agent responses, all delivered reliably and securely through our federated graph. The impact has been transformative. Conversations that used to feel sluggish now feel almost instantaneous. Employers see richer candidate information in real time, and we hit that 9-month deadline with confidence. And now we're just getting started. We're already expanding to power collaborative features like shared candidate shortlists and document editing. With Apollo, we built a natural conversation experience on a solid foundation. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks. Awesome, thank you. Yeah, what you just heard about 350 plus subgraphs, dozens of teams shipping every day, that's the reality of building at an AI pace in an enterprise scale. And so today, we're announcing 3 new additions to GraphOS to help each of you at the platform level with your graph development. 1, we've made it easier to provide high-quality observability dashboards for your teams. 2, we've made it easier to reliably roll out changes to your graph with what we're calling graph artifacts. And 3, we've made it easier to run Apollo in Kubernetes environments with a built-in Kubernetes operator. Let me start with observability. So based on what we've learned working with many of you, we've developed an opinionated set of templates that capture what we've found are the best practices for how to observe the graph layer of the stack alongside other parts of a modern application development stack. And they're templates, so they're quick to get started with, but you can also customize them as you need. And what we think about with something like this is that for many engineers, first contact with this is going to be at 3 in the morning when something's wrong. And they don't know where in the stack the problem is or what's going on. So a lot of the effort here goes not just into the presentation of the data, but into a set of things that help you understand and navigate what that means and help you make quick decisions about what makes sense to do next in a situation where you need to move quickly and understand deeply. So that's APM templates. With graph artifacts, what we're adding is an OCI-compliant registry, and on top of that, a build object that lets you store and reference individual versions of your schema. What that enables are a set of workflows. For example, you can pin a fleet of routers to a particular schema build, or you can roll back to a known good schema without having to wait on a GraphOS update or a rebuild or a republish. So there's a lot of patterns and workflows here that this makes possible at an architectural level. And finally, the operator. And this is the one I'm most excited about. Everything you need to run Apollo in a native Kubernetes environment. And I want to show you what that looks like. So let me invite JR from the Apollo team up to the stage for a demo.
Thank you so much, Matt, for that introduction. And can I just add my welcome to Matt and to everybody else? It's so wonderful to see so many people here to want to talk about GraphQL, and particularly, in my case, to talk about the operator. So what is the GraphOS operator? Well, really what it is it's a way of bringing declarative Kubernetes-style management, but to GraphOS objects. So all the things that we're used to managing in Studio, the operator gives us a way to manage them in a Kubernetes cluster. And what I really want to focus on is 3 specific things that the operator enables with this new declarative style. The first of those is how easy it is to get the operator up and running. The second of which is how the operator benefits from all of the incredible idioms and practices that Kubernetes has around deployments in new ways. And thirdly, I want to focus on exactly how the operator enables integration with existing GitOps and existing CI/CD processes, probably with tools that you're already using and you already have established over a long period of time. So if we want to get started here, if we have a look at this cluster, this is just a simple cluster that I'm running on my laptop, and all these processes are just the processes that we need in order to run it. So how do we get the operator actually installed? And really, it's just 2 commands that you need. Now, I'm going to copy these out of here because I don't want to have to do a typing test in front of all of you, because I know what will happen if I do that. So if we do this, this runs a rover command, which is a new rover command we've added, which enables us to create an operator API key. And we've added that secret to the cluster. And now, all we need to do is run a simple Helm command, and that will install the Helm chart that powers the operator. And that's it. That's the operator installed. There's nothing more to do. But the operator on its own isn't powerful, as particularly. It's powerful when you add to it custom resources that it can reconcile. So if we have a look at this new resource here, This is a supergraph resource, and this maps fairly cleanly to the variants that we know and love in Studio. And in this case, what we're going to do is we're going to deploy a fleet of routers that has 3 replicas and is pinned to this graph ref here, this media supergraph Keynote. So if I apply this to the cluster, then what we will see when we look inside the cluster is that we have these spinning up. Now, this isn't a Facebook meta moment. They're not error. It's fine. They will resolve in momentarily. But that shows you how simple it is to get a fleet of routers actually up and running. You just need the 2 commands and to simply add that supergraph custom resource, and then your routers will spin up. No complicated back and forth with Studio, no custom scripts. This will all just work within the operator. And there we have it. That is a fleet of routers. That's all you need to do. Thank you, you're a wonderful audience, and I'll pay you all later. But what if we want to do something a little bit more complicated? What if we actually want to think about how a deployment might happen if changes occur to our schema? So for that, we're going to have to move to a slightly more complicated example, but it's fairly similar to what we've seen previously. So here we have still the operator running and still our fleet of routers, but we also have these 2 services in the middle. So the first one, product, this is actually a REST API. So this is connected into our supergraph with connectors. And reviews, which is a standard GraphQL service. So literally, you can put the operator on top of anything that you already have running in Kubernetes, and it will just work. So what if we want to make a change to one of these subgraph schemas and watch the router fleet redeploy? Well, if we do that, again, I'm going to have to do a typing test, so we'll see how this goes, but here we are. So this is the connector schema that you've probably seen this kind of thing before. So let's suppose that we want to add a field to this product type. We can do that. We know that we expose category on this API. And then we can also add that to our selector here. And if we do that, I can definitely spell. Then we do this and apply it to the cluster. What's going to happen is the operator will detect that that change has been made. It will push a composition request up to Studio with the new subgraph schema that we've changed and the existing one, trigger a composition, re-download the supergraph schema, and redeploy the router fleet. And there we have it. And that's happening with a really standard Kubernetes recreate deployment strategy. And that's relatively primitive in Kubernetes terms. But because we're now in Kubernetes, that opens up the possibility to do blue-green deployments, canaries, and all sorts of new deployment types that we've never had the ability to do before. And so that's really the power of moving inside of Kubernetes, is you gain all of these new mechanisms of deployment because you're already there and Kubernetes knows how to reconcile those objects. And now for the final thing I want to show is how the integration with existing GitOps processes. So imagine that you're the team that owns this reviews service. And imagine you have a GitHub repo that looks like this. You've got some JavaScript in there, you've got your schema GraphQL, and you've got a Docker file. And the whole point of this repo is to just build a Docker image from that Docker file so you can deploy it. If we go to the schema file, if we make a small change here, so let's suppose that we want to actually get rid of this deprecated field. We've done all the process in the background, and we just want to get rid of this deprecated field. If we do that, and then if in contravention of all good security policy, we just push directly to main because, it's absolutely fine, then what this is going to do is this is going to trigger a GitHub action, which is going to build this Docker image that contains the schema and contains the implementation. Now, you might well say, isn't that quite similar to what you just did, changing the subgraphs? And you'd be right thinking that. But the important point here is because everything's bundled inside that Docker image, including the resolvers, this not only allows you to trigger changes to your supergraph based on changes to the schema, but actually based on changes to your resolvers as well. So that's something that is new. And this is, again, something that enables the operator, with its visibility into the fleet, to be able to track these changes and then redeploy the supergraph as a result. So while this kind of goes on and builds, the other thing to make the point is that even though this is GitHub Actions, it doesn't have to be. All the operator is doing is looking for new publications of new Docker images. So anything that you've got that produces an OCI image will work. And this also will integrate really well with any tool like Flux or Argo CD. Anything you've got that's managing the GitOps state of your clusters will integrate really well with the operator. So if we now go back, and this is the moment where I get down on my knees and pray to the demo gods that this is actually going to work, because we always have these things where you run it hundreds of times and you're never quite sure. But essentially, what's going to happen here is that because we published that new OCI artifact, the operator will pick that up, and it will be able to calculate that there's a difference between the schema that's deployed and the schema that it wants to run from the OCI artifact. It will then push that request up to Studio. It will then cause the supergraph to be recomposed and then redeploy it into the fleet. And so from that, you're able to do deployments based not only on changes to schema, as we've been able to do for a long time, but based on changes in the actual subgraph services themselves, no matter what that might happen to be. Now, unfortunately, I think that my laptop is probably going to be afflicted with as much jet lag as I have, having come here from the UK, and so I feel like this is probably going to happen as soon as I walk off stage. But due to timing, I'm going to have to kind of wrap this up at this point. But I really wanted to emphasize those three things: ease of setup with the operator, ability to opt into new deployment mechanisms because of the things that Kubernetes gives you, and integration with all your existing CI/CD suites and the tools that you already have. And I'm now going to hand back to Matt, who's going to take us through the rest of the presentation. Thank you very much.
Thanks, JR. So we're really excited about this direction. Most of our largest graph deployments are in a Kubernetes environment. And what Kubernetes allows us to do is have a more principled, more reliable, more available approach to how graph serves a broader and broader footprint of applications, and a more robust and reliable approach to how not just humans can deploy changes to the graph, but how agents can interact with the platform in a principled and sound way. And so what you saw are the 3 points that JR went through. The operator is very easy to set up. It's simple. It drops right into a standard Kubernetes environment and integrates with the graph that you've got today. You can do more principled deployments where changes to the graph cycle up new versions of the router pinned to that version. And we now have an idiomatic way of working with connectors and subgraphs that run in a Kubernetes environment. All these things tie together: the operator, the graph artifacts, and the GraphOS workflows that you know and love. OK, so that's the platform foundations. Now let's talk about what we're going to do about a growing amount of software and the integration challenge that that presents. How can Apollo help with that? Well, many of you saw this slide last year at Summit. You know, the idea here is that GraphQL is incredible, but the knock on it for some is that the upfront complexity can be daunting, right? You need to design a schema and build GraphQL services to take advantage of everything that GraphQL offers. And what we set out to do with connectors is to make the ramp much more smooth. And we're really excited about the adoption and the progress that we've seen with REST connectors so far. We have more improvements to share today on connectors. And before I get to that, I wanted to invite Jonathan from Block up to talk about their experience so far with connectors and how it's improved the ROI of GraphQL at Block. So welcome, Jonathan.
Thank you, Matt. Hello, everyone. It's really exciting to be back here at Summit. This is my third time. At Block, our API ecosystem is being built by over 700 engineering teams, managing more than 3,000 different services. Our challenge isn't only scale, but it's helping engineering teams ship value for customers quickly without getting bogged down in complexity. We partnered with Apollo very early on in our GraphQL journey because we believe in the potential of being able to stitch together concepts and domains that span this ecosystem. But here's the thing. GraphQL isn't the end goal for us. Block's purpose is economic empowerment, which means that for our GraphQL platform, the mission is to help engineers at Square and Cash App deliver on that promise for our customers as quickly as possible. Now, GraphQL has been growing at Block steadily over the last few years. It's become a cornerstone of our internal tools platforms and is seeing traction in our web platforms as well. But our APIs are gRPC first, which means that for a team to bring their APIs to the graph, it means they have to learn to think and operate in new patterns and to set up brand new infrastructure. At an organization of our size, that can be quite a bit of friction that adds up over time. So when Apollo announced connectors at last year's GraphQL Summit, our team was immediately excited at the possibility of being able to solve these problems for our stakeholder teams. When we got back from the event, we immediately started building out a POC to see, can we actually connect these gRPC APIs to the graph? And it worked. So we invested in a Hack Week project, invited a dozen other teams to bring their APIs using connectors, and their success inspired us to pivot. We spent the next months and quarters deeply integrating connectors into our GraphQL platform at Block. The transformation has been dramatic. Connectors has let teams bring their APIs to the graph without any additional infrastructure or having to be GraphQL experts. What used to take weeks now takes days, sometimes hours if people have used connectors before. Due to their simplicity and the developer velocity that they've enabled, connectors have become our recommended pathway for teams new to GraphQL to add their data to the graph. Now we're taking this even further. Block's open source AI agent, Goose, which, as Matt mentioned earlier, if you'd like to try it out, you can participate in the hackathon going on today, can automatically build connectors. So we're very excited to see the coverage expand across Block and GraphQL in the coming year. All in all, this partnership between Block and Apollo on connectors has fundamentally shifted how we've thought about driving GraphQL adoption across the enterprise. If you want to learn more about how we're using Goose and AI and connectors together, you're all invited to our session later today. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jonathan. All right, so we've continued to invest in connectors to support more and more of the APIs you have and to be able to do more and more with those APIs. And earlier this year, we announced batch support, for example. So if you've got an API that returns multiple objects at once, you can take advantage of that. There's been a lot that we've added over the year. And today, we've got more. So we're adding 3 big features to connectors today. The first is we are adding connector-level metrics and insights to Studio. So one thing we've learned about connectors is that they... Sure. I'm always surprised by what most resonates. Here you go. We have learned that with connectors, they tend to be more fine-grained, more narrow. And so it's easy to end up with a lot of them, more than with traditional subgraphs. And that made connector metrics a much requested feature. So we're happy to have those in place right now. And they bring you all the existing observability from GraphOS that you'd expect, request counts and error rates and latency and performance data and so forth, but scoped down to the connector level. And by the way, these metrics also work with traditional subgraphs. So if you're working with a traditional federated graph that has separate subgraph services, you'll be able to take advantage of these new metrics as well. Second thing is we have now a unit testing framework for connectors. So you can run connectors in isolation in your development environment, and you can build an acceptance test suite around individual connectors that can be part of your standard CI/CD build process. And finally, we've added a lot more to the connector language. We call these transforms that let you do more with APIs and adapt to a greater variety of APIs. So we now have functions to work with arrays. We've got a whole library of math and logic methods in connectors. And we've got type coercion so that you can maintain strong typing across the request path. I'll give you a couple examples of what this looks like. So this first example, we see this all the time in Graph. You might have an API that returns a price field and a tax rate, but what you want in the schema, what you want to put on the screen, is a total price that includes the tax. So you can now do this natively in connectors. You don't have to write a resolver. You don't have to write client code to do that. You can centralize that into your Graph schema, but in a fully declarative way. Or another example is with array management, you can now filter down. You often see this pattern as well in APIs. Maybe we have an API that returns a whole array of users. We can bake into the connector definition a subset of those users based on some kind of a predicate that we filter against. So those are two examples of the sorts of things that these functions allow you to do. More are coming, but we think there's a lot here that expands both the scope of APIs that you can bring into the graph with a connector and what you can do with those APIs, how you adapt to the graph and the schema that you want. So we've made some good progress. But like, it's 2025. And what we really expect, I think, now that we have agentic development is something much, much faster even than the benefit you get from a connector versus having to build a subgraph server. And thanks to agentic development, we can do that. So I'm super excited to announce our first set of GraphOS MCP tools designed for building connectors that you can bring into any agentic coding platform. And we're going to demo them. Let me invite Michael Watson up on stage to show you what we've got. Welcome.
There's more things to plug in this here, so I have to, make sure everything's all up and good. OK, I think we are almost good. Let me turn off my Wi-Fi. Get this good internet. OK, all right. I think we're good to switch over to the demo. OK, so got two hands this year, so it's going to be a lot easier, right? I had to start with that, right? I can clap. For those of you who don't know, I had a broken pinky last year. So, all right, so I'm going to show you a little workflow of agentic development with connectors using the new GraphOS tools. So just to set the stage a little bit, we're going to use two different APIs we're going to bring together. We're going to use Flight Radar 24. There's a lot of information in here. I'm actually just going to go down to the OpenAPI specification. I'm just going to download that file real quick. We're also going to get together some weather information. I've been traveling a lot lately. I've made some mistakes on some of my travel. And the airports I'm flying to, I kind of need to know the weather. And so I want to bring these two together. So we're just also going to take this OpenAPI spec, and we're going to save it. All right, so we got our two spec files. Now I'm going to jump over to VS Code. And I just have a simple rover knitted project inside of here. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to drag those two files into here. And now I'm just going to start up Claude. Now, before we start giving any prompts or anything, I just want to show you the MCP server. So I have the GraphOS MCP server connected. This is one of the things we're just announcing. It has three tools inside of it. One is a connector spec tool. This is basically a concise doc set for the LLM to understand how to build a connector. And then there's also some docs read and search capabilities. But better than just talk about those tools, let's actually show it in action. So I have a little simple prompt here, given the LLM telling it, hey, here are the OpenAPI files. And then for a given airport, I want to get the inbound and outbound flights, and I want to get the current weather for those flights, wherever the airport is. And there's my API key, and start testing stuff, right? Now, this is going to run for a minute, but before I start talking about what it's doing, I want to take a moment to talk about and really emphasize these are real APIs. I picked two APIs that were not designed by the same people. They were completely separate worlds. And you can even see it flashed on the screen for a second. The YAML file was too big for the context window, right? What we've put together with our connectors tool really gives a structured flow. So one, there's the understanding of what I want to put into there, but you can see it's already starting to pull in our connector spec tooling. So I'm going to say yes. And inside of that connector spec is a concise set of how to work with connectors, but also links to things like our documentation. What are the relevant aspects of building out a connector? So it's going to take all that information, and it's going to start planning out tasks. You can see it. I have the tasks open for Claude Code, and it's starting to go through and figure things out. And it has an understanding of Rover, how it can compose things. It also gets information from the language server locally. And you can see it's already starting to make some changes. And I'm just going to say yes, just go ahead and start doing your stuff. I normally just let it do whatever it wants. But what's really cool about this is because of federation everything, we get really rich information from Supergraph Compose. And we can see when there's composition errors flashing on the screen, all of that information is going right back into the LLM to make corrections and fix things. And it's going to keep going through this, and we're not going to sit here and watch. It might take 5 minutes, it might take 10 minutes. This is kind of the part. But it eventually gets to a point where the connector is working and running. So we're going to swipe over to this fully baked version in here. And let me make this the right size. And this is an example of the graph that gets designed coming outside of that. Now, I will say, we gave it just one prompt, and it built this thing. Maybe we have another question. I might run something and maybe need to adjust something small. But for the most part, this is a good general shape of what I had it consistently generating. And we have a couple types in there. We have our airport type. We have our flight type. We have the weather condition over here. But one detail that I really love is the LLM's also able to understand some of these connections. And one that I think is really cool is the origin and destination on a flight. It recognizes that those codes are actually just references back to the airport type, which is great. That's actually what we want. We want those connections to be made. So it's taking those REST API endpoints and really bringing them together in like a new way. And I will go into VS Code to show this is an example of what one of the connectors that it generated looks like. So we can see, it got the query parameters right. It noticed that in this API, it returns an array with a single object in it, which is actually kind of common in some APIs, and it's pulling the first one from it. So it's pretty cool that it gets that all right. And then I can go into Explorer, and I can author a little query, run it, and everything's working, right? So we just, in a matter of like 10 minutes, you have a fully running graph from just a simple prompt using these new MCP tools, which I think is really awesome. Now, it's great to have an agentic workflow around developing our graph, but there's more that we can do. And this is actually another agentic workflow that I want to show everyone that we've been working on and we're going to continue to advance. Once we've designed our graph, there's times we may want to design an operation or even just have an understanding of what's going on in our graph. And so I'm going to go back into VS Code. We'll make this larger. We're going to start Claude back up again. And this time, I'm just going to ask a question. Can you search my graph and tell me what I can do with it? And we have a couple dev tools in here. One is the introspection tool, which it's now running through and understanding pieces of our graph. And there's also a search tool. So what's really nice about this is the introspection tool allows the LLM to be able to look at what our root query and mutation fields are. It can do any type, but that's one of the best places to start. And then the relevant search terms that are coming back from that root query, the return types, the relevant input types, those can all be used as search terms. So we'll let that proceed. It's going to search. And it might search for more things. It's just going to kind of explore the schema right now to give us an understanding of what's going on. All right. It even gave us some examples. But you can see it's giving you some core operations. So the airport information, live flight tracking, weather information, all these ICAO codes, IATA codes. This is all right. And we should be able to take this information, just tell an LLM, generate me an operation for this. Maybe you have a new developer that's coming onto your graph. They just have a GitHub issue, some UI component they're trying to build. Maybe you want to build an MCP tool for it. Who knows? But what's really cool about this is the LLM, now with that understanding of the graph shape, it's able to generate an operation. and then use our validate tool. And the validate tool is there to see is it a valid GraphQL operation. And what's nice is sometimes we get errors. I'm glad the error popped this time. It didn't pop up earlier. Perfect. Error pops up, and GraphQL has great error information that gets returned, right? Well, that information could just be fed back to the LLM so it can fix them. So it's going to search for some more terms, right? And it's going to now be able to iterate on that operation, validate the new operation generated, which is valid, and then it should pop it out for me right here. And so here's an operation that we just generated from a graph that we just created all in a pretty short period of time. I think that's pretty awesome. And I can't wait to see what you all build with this. And one thing I'd say at the end is if you want to do the hackathon, this is actually part of the hackathon. So come join us in the lounge, check it out. And the last thing I'll say before I turn it over to Matt, because I'm a big fan of beer and Oktoberfest, the Apollo Fest party is actually tonight. It's not tomorrow. I know the slide said tomorrow. It's tonight. So make sure you go tonight. Tonight. Awesome. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Matt.
Awesome. I told you the planes and the weather were coming back. I just want to repeat what Watson talked about. These are real-world APIs. And what's so valuable here is to be able to take APIs that were built in different technologies at different times in the history of your company and bring them together very, very quickly, having a working graph, and then being able to use agentic development on top of that. That's the value of a declarative architecture. This is only really possible because we've got these objects. We've got a platform that has a set of primitives that an agent, that an LLM can understand and work with. And we've got the language in GraphQL to be able to do all of the things that go between those APIs as they exist and the experience that you want to build. So that's the start of what I think is going to be a long and exciting road ahead for all of us on agentic development on top of GraphQL. Our vision here is to make MCP a first-class interface and really the front door, the most important interface to the platform. And we start with graph construction and query authoring, but there's so much to do here. All the different parts of the development lifecycle. There's opportunities to bring the graph that you've already built and the additions that you'll make to it to a greater number of people that don't have the kind of GraphQL expertise that you all do. Even people outside of the engineering organization that want to be able to browse the graph and the data in the graph and be able to make business decisions based on that. There's opportunities here for change management and governance and graph quality. And so over the coming months, you're going to see more and more tools be added to the MCP server. We're really excited about that, and the release today of Apollo MCP is our first installment of that. So we're eager for your feedback and to learn more about what this lets you do and where you'd like us to take it next. Okay, so that's agentic development. How's everybody doing? Good? Yeah? So let's talk finally about intelligent apps and how we're going to build them. So the whole idea of an agent is it's AI that can do stuff, right? It can call APIs, it can talk to outside systems. And the technology, the protocol that unlocked that idea is MCP. MCP is really new. It's less than a year old. And in just a short amount of time, it has gained amazing traction. If you want to talk about how fast things are happening in the AI world, look no further than the rise of MCP and all of the energy and excitement around it. Just an explosion of MCP services. Everybody loves MCP. Last I checked, there's actually multiple public registries or catalogs of MCP servers. I took a look at just one of them a few days ago. There's over 16,000 registered public MCP endpoints on this particular one. Here's what it looks like in San Francisco. This is MCP Night. This is 1,000 developers, standing room only, in San Francisco. This particular event is hosted by WorkOS. And my friend and their CEO, Michael Grinick, will be here tomorrow morning. We're going to talk about AI in the enterprise, and I'm excited for that. So there's just an absurd level of energy and interest in the tech community here, but it's also in the enterprise. Gartner sees it too. It's showing up everywhere, and I think the reality is that for all of its flaws, for all of its immaturity, MCP is here to stay, and it has become the accepted starting point for how we're going to build the agentic apps of tomorrow. We've got, I think, 7 talks here at Summit about MCP and about what you all are doing already with GraphQL and MCP. Go to these talks. You're going to learn a lot, and I think, again, MCP is going to be at the heart of a lot of the strategy going forward for all of us. Why does this matter? It's because MCP unlocks agents. Look at what OpenAI and Etsy announced just last week. You can buy stuff from the chatbot. So it's here. Every company is going to want to have this kind of free-form, dynamic, meet the user where they are, where they want to be met, kind of intelligent experiences. And I mean, this is probably how you want to shop, right? Like, why wouldn't you? And whether it's shopping or travel or media or entertainment, I just think it's clear so much of the digital experience is going to look like this. And that means building MCP tools. That means taking the APIs that you have and making them adapted for AI. AI moves fast. Just yesterday, here's another one. OpenAI announced a new apps SDK. So maybe you haven't seen this one yet, but the idea is a platform for ChatGPT that allows you to develop applications and services inside GPT that have these inline user elements that render as part of the chat experience. And the way that works, what that platform's built on, is MCP. So what OpenAI did here is they extended MCP with some additional properties, and one of them is that you can now inline your HTML, your UI, as part of the MCP transaction. So this is the backbone, and as OpenAI says, it's the backbone that keeps the server and the model and the UI all in sync together. So it's really, really clear, right? With the growing adoption and all these recent announcements, MCP is the critical interface. It's here to stay. And all of us are going to have to build high-quality MCP tools right now, today. Not tomorrow, not next year, today. This is why earlier this year we built Apollo MCP Server. David spoke about this a few minutes ago. It allows you to build high-quality MCP tools on top of your graph without writing any code. So it's another notch in the strategy of using a declarative architecture to build on top of a stable foundation to meet the needs of the applications that you're trying to build. So there's no juggling the MCP framework of the week. There's no writing fussy MCP code. I mean, I don't know, what's the batting average on MCP servers that got rolled out by different companies, and how many of them ended up having a gaping security flaw, right? Like, I think we're well below the Mendoza line on this stuff. And this is where I think we can help. Because our approach is you write a GraphQL query, and that query defines a tool. It's all declarative, and it's all backed by the platform, so you get all the benefits of what's been proven, what's been tested, and you get the agility benefits of being able to do that very, very quickly without a complete software development lifecycle. We've seen a ton of uptake already, and what I'm super excited to announce today is GA of our Apollo MCP Server. It's a complete solution for building and operating high-quality MCP tools on top of the APIs that you have, all with native GraphQL, all without writing code. And there's a lot in it that we've added, but two that I wanted to highlight that I think are most important are auth and observability. So one of these is built-in auth support. It's really important. Auth is a moving target in MCP. So this security challenge is real, but it's also challenging to navigate for teams that aren't knee-deep in the intricacies of MCP and don't want to sign up for the task of constantly following the latest and adapting to the approach that moves to the front burner. So we've added a built-in turnkey answer for how you do auth in your MCP tools that's all tidied up and ready to go. And the other is observability, right? Observability is critical because the strategy that so many have taken with MCP and with agentic apps is to start with a lot of experiments. And you put a bunch of irons in the fire and you see what really sings, and that's what you want to be able to take into production. So there's a lot of things that were built in haste that teams want to move quickly into a production setting. And platforms, and observability in particular, is essential to be able to do that with confidence. And so we've added a number of integrations with OTel and all the spans and all the different metrics that we have found are most important for being able to operate these MCP tools at scale in a production setting. It's all about a platform. It's all about a foundation. That's what we're doing here with the MCP server. And I'm going to bring Watson back onto stage one more time to show you some of what's now possible with Apollo MCP. Welcome, Watson, again.
Yeah, it seems fine. OK. All right. Just making sure everything's like running and stuff, you know? All right, let's switch over to the demo. OK. So did that work? OK. I didn't reset something. So you all didn't see this. I switched over too soon. But just ignore that. We'll start over. OK. So imagine we're starting from kind of the previous point where we had like an operation that we started putting together. And I said I want to get flights. I wanted to get things about the outbound flights. I wanted to get that destination, things like the city. The weather was important. We'll just put temperature inside of there. But we have an operation that we start building out, right? This is what Matt's talking about, defining the fields that we want to provide as context to the LLM in a tool. And I'm going to want to give this a name, so like outbound flights for airport. And I'm just going to save that operation. Now, this is saving it to an operation collection. So this is something that's always been in GraphOS. Now, I have everything running locally. You can see I'm logged into my account over here. I'm just logged into like a free account. Works the same for all of them. And we have our default MCP tool. So any operation that we save into this collection is going to become a tool that's available for the MCP server. And so I'm going to switch over to MCP Inspector. So if you're not familiar with this, this is basically like the GraphQL Playground, the Graphical, the Apollo Explorer type of experience for an MCP server developer. Model Context Protocol / Inspector basically allows us to connect to a running MCP server and see things like what tools it has. So I'm going to connect and click List Tools. And you can see here is that tool that we had just saved inside of here. Outbound flights, airport. I can put in a code, Sacramento. It runs. Internet's going to, of course, do this to me right now, but that's demos. So there we go, success, right? So we got a bunch of flights. We got some errors in there. That happens. But the important part is getting these details back. Now, what I think is really cool is when you start thinking about how do I want to maybe augment or change this tool, right? I kind of look in this. This is an auto-generated description based off of what that schema the LLM had provided earlier. Maybe I want to customize that, change that. So we're going to hop back over to Sandbox. and we're going to start making some changes. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give a tool description. So gets all the outbound flight information for a destination. And then let's add in like for the airport flights, let's get the aircraft model, just something in there. And I think this weather was something that I normally had up here for my demo, but let's just put the current weather for the airport up here. And now that I've given a description to it, there's also another aspect in here. I have this code. Well, I can also give a description to the code, because this code could be the IATA code or the ICAO code. And I could do more stuff to augment this I want, but all I got to do is save it, right? And really, this is just the workflow of updating a tool that is connected to our MCP server. So just like what we have with the router, a lot of the Apollo technology, we have hot reload for what these tools are and what's being updated. So if we go back to MCP Inspector, what we'll end up seeing is you see here on the left there's this history of the calls that are happening inside the MCP server. Initialize, tools list, tool call, and then over on the right that just popped up, tool list changed. So one of the things that's available as part of the MCP protocol is letting the server send a notification to a client that its tool list has changed. So if I just simply clear and list the tools again, you'll notice that the tool is now updated with the description we just wrote and the argument that's in there. So we didn't have to redeploy a server, we didn't have to change any code, we didn't have to do anything. We just have the ability to write the tools and provide the context we want to an LLM. Now, I think this is really cool, but it's sometimes a little hard to grok with it until you get to see it in a consumer experience, right? If you think about you're building tools for these agents, whether you're building your own agent or you're using another agent like Claude or Goose, you only have so much control of what you can do. And really, you want to work with the tools that you're defining and be able to make changes into that. So why don't we open up Goose? So Goose is here. Goose is actually my favorite agent. It's the same thing as like Claude Desktop. A lot of the agents, they all kind of have their little personal preferences for users. But I'm just going to ask, can you tell me about the flights coming out of Sacramento International? Now, of course, it's going to happen on my demo that it probably disconnected from my extension. So let me just close this and make a new chat window and say, can you tell me about outbound flights going out of Sacramento International? I think that was the question I was asking, something like that. All right, so now it called our tool. So, you know, it wouldn't be a good demo if something didn't go wrong, right? You can see it gave it the code, SMF, and then here's the output of all that information inside of here. And now the LLM is able to understand and give us a nice summary inside of here. Right? So like, in all of that, in just a couple minutes, we authored a tool. We shipped that tool by saving it, having it uploaded. We decided we didn't like some of that. We changed the tool, saved it, and this is what it looks like inside of an agentic experience. And I think that's really powerful because when I've been developing a lot of my stuff, I'm going back and forth between the tool descriptions of what I'm putting together, what is the actual fields of context I want to return. And this is a really nice workflow that I'm really just working with operations, saving them, and having that updates hot reload into the router. But it's not just like the changes. Sometimes you might ship something and say, oh no, we shipped this field, and now that tool is not doing what we want it to be doing. And sometimes you want to remove stuff, and it all works the same. So I can come back in here, and let's say that the weather didn't make sense at the airport level. Maybe we just didn't want to give that information. So we just delete it and save it. That's going to end up triggering that hot reload, and then that just won't be available inside of it anymore. Now, we'll have to wait a second because it is internet, so it takes a moment for the tools list to change. But once we have that notification, we have everything we need. It's always one of the nerve-wracking times of demos in the agentic world where you're just waiting of like, it's going to happen, I promise. Unless this was the one and I just missed it. Yeah, well, let's clear list this tool, and let's actually just see if that was it. All right, well, the weather is gone, so maybe that was notification. I just missed it. Whew, yeah. Let's test in the agent to make sure, and I'm not lying, right? So we're just going to kick off the same exact prompt. We'll save it. We'll send that off. It's going to pick the right tool. Yep. Now, if you look in here, I don't see weather stuff, right? It's kind of hard to tell, but we'll see that weather section response from Goose is going to be cut out now with that response. There we go. So now it's got all the flights, but there's no weather anymore, right? So we have a lot more coming, and we're going to be going and developing a lot more tooling to help you as you're authoring these tools. But I think this is a really good example of the workflow of how do we go from an operation to start making that the right context we want for an LLM and have a full way to provision that within GraphOS just like we have everything else. So if you really like this too, guess what? This is also part of the hackathon. So come to the hackathon and try it out. Awesome. All right, back to you, Matt.
It's actually, that is a new one. I haven't seen a demo fail because it went too fast and escaped our attention. There's a lot inside that maybe I can just highlight. One thing we saw is that MCP tools don't map one-to-one to the APIs that you've got. You want a tool, in this example, that returns a combination of data from an airport's API, a flight status, a flight status API, a weather API that was built by a different team in a different setting. I'm impressed that API is up with the shutdown now that I think about it. And so the idea of GraphQL, the idea of what we've done with our MCP server, is that you're not limited to some simple one-to-one mapping of APIs you already have to tools you want to build. There's a join. There's a transformation inside of that. Another thing that we saw is we know how important narrowing the context window is to keep a model on track. And we know how important it is to focus on a consistent user experience. We want the agentic experience that you saw on the screen, but I don't want one customer to see weather and the next customer not to see the weather. So here's where GraphQL comes to bear again, because we can specify and tailor and narrow the tool for exactly what it is that you want to be able to do. So there's a lot to like, I think, about this approach. It's all the hallmarks of a great platform approach to building things. Anybody in an organization can build these sorts of tools. So it's self-service. You're not the bottleneck as the platform owner. It doesn't require this deep MCP knowledge. But because it's a platform, it centralizes a lot of the concerns that should be centralized. Security, auth, even details like which transport is everybody using this week in MCP, and all the other intricacies that go into rolling out a high-quality production service. And of course, the whole thing, because it's done declaratively, can be done in real time. So the pace of AI really mandates that. You don't want to wait for a whole software development lifecycle and code reviews and security reviews. Again, the stakes are high, but you want to be able to ship very, very quickly. And we think this approach where the changes in the tool don't go through a traditional software deployment lifecycle have a lot to offer in a world where AI speed is measured in minutes instead of sprints. So that's our MCP server, and I want to wrap there for this morning. We've shared a lot of new stuff today. Things that are at the deep platform level, things that are on the client, things that are part of the new world of MCP. And the point I want to make is that every one of these things, every one of the things we talked about today is essential in an agentic first world. So that's our focus. That's what we're going to be focused on going forward. We're going to bring GraphQL in that direction. And we're going to bring the platform in that direction because we see the opportunity to help each of you help your companies with what I think is going to be the most important priority facing every company over the next couple years. And I'll close on that. It's just an amazing time I think, to be in technology. The history of technology is a history of people building incredible things to make the world a better place. And there's moments, there's periods where everything changes very quickly and dramatically, and it changes for good. And we're in one of those moments. We're right at the start of it. And I'm excited for that. I'm excited to be in the room with all of you and for all of us to have what I think is going to be such an important role in everything that's about to unfold. So let's go get it. I can't wait to see what you've done when we next get together, and enjoy the conference.